Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to live show 147. Just turn that down a bit. Drones and Deceptions, streaming live from Minsk, Belarus. Tonight we have special guest investigative journalist Patrik Baab, who spent decades covering geopolitics, intelligence, and conflict zones. His work has often challenged official narratives and given audiences a perspective they don't hear in the mainstream Western media. Over the past few weeks, the war in Ukraine has taken new turns, not only in the battlefield but across Europe's skies. Drone incidents over Denmark, alleged airspace violations in Estonia, and the dramatic reports of drones crashing in Poland during September's Russian strikes have fueled questions about what's real, what's staged, and who benefits. Along this, we see escalating rhetoric from NATO, sharp divisions in Europe, and a US political climate that could shift the entire direction of the conflict. Tonight we're going to dig into these issues with Patrik Baab, the war itself, the drone controversies, the claims of false flags and disinformation, and the wider global picture. With that, let's dive in. Let's start. Okay, tonight we're joined by Patrik Baab, investigative journalist and author. He's reported extensively on NATO, Russia, and the Ukraine conflict. Patrik brings a sharp, independent perspective rarely heard in Western media. He was on our show previously, number 132, and that show has the record amount of views in our show's history. Patrik, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on again. It's very much appreciated.
Hello, Dave. Thank you for inviting me.
Let's start with the Ukraine war itself. What do you see as the most significant recent developments on the battlefield and diplomatically, and have there been any turning points in the last weeks that stand out to you?
So we can divide this war, we can see this war on three levels. The first level is the actions on the battlefield. The second level is the economic warfare. And the third one is the propaganda war. On the battlefield, the Russian army is getting forward slowly, but step by step and every day a bit more. Currently, the Russians have more than 700,000 soldiers in Ukraine and Donbass. And the strategy of the Russian side is not to occupy territories. The strategy is to destroy the enemy. And this is what we see right now. Some weeks ago, there was a leak by Russian computer experts, a leak of numbers of the Ukraine general staff. And the numbers show that Ukraine losses reached an amount of more than 1.7 million soldiers, not casualties, death and lost soldiers. And the reason for that, I think this is reliable, because the reason for that is regarding drones, missiles, and artillery. The Russians have 10 more. The Russians have, on every Ukraine missile, the Russians have 10 missiles. On every Ukraine battery, they have 10 batteries. And this is a war of artillery. And that's the background for that. So the Western countries are trying to organize and to construct military facilities on Ukraine ground to reinforce the Ukraine army. And with hypersonic missiles, the Russian forces are trying to destroy these production facilities at the moment. This is what happened on the battlefield. Diplomatically, the Europeans, EU and UK are refusing to negotiate with Russia. Chancellor Merz, the German chancellor, said the time for diplomacy is over. And this shows that the European countries, the Western European countries, are trying to continue the war. The idea behind is to unbalance Russia by an endless war. And they try to reorganize their military forces and their military powers in hope they can win the war against Russia later. Let me say in 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 years. So they won't stop the war. And the strategy is we deliver the weapons and the Ukrainians are delivering the bodies. And this is cynical. On the other hand, President Trump posted that the Ukraine army can win the war and reconquer the territories that were incorporated in the Russian Federation, including Crimea, with the help of Europeans. From my point of view, in my interpretation, this is not a votum for full-scale war and all in. It is a way to make the European countries responsible for that what happened on the battlefield and to Europeanize the Ukraine war. And if the Ukraine army will fail to win the war, so the Trump administration can hold the Europeans responsible. And that's the background of that what happened. And during the same time, the propaganda war. The propaganda sirens are howling as loud as never. And so the propaganda industry is producing on full scale to legitimize this cynical course of the European countries in their own people. So the majority of, I can say it from Germany, the majority of German people is sleeping, and only a minority is protesting for war and is protesting for peace and against war.
We've also seen a series of aerial incidents, reports of unidentified drones over Danish territory and alleged Russian aircraft incursions into Estonian airspace. What's been confirmed there, and how do these countries have reacted?
We have different cases, and we have to evaluate every single case. I'd like to start with the drone case, the drones that were found in Poland.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 possibilities. The first possibility is the Russian army shot drones into a NATO country. The second possibility is Russian drones were jammed and left their course and, well, came down in Poland. And the third possibility is this could be a Ukraine false flag operation to draw NATO countries and especially the United States deeper into this war. So what can we see on the ground? First of all, these drones were not equipped with warheads. The second point is this special type of drones cannot fly 1,000 kilometers from the Donbas to Polish ground, only 700 kilometers. And the third point is the destroyed house that we saw in the internet was not hit by drones, but by a Polish rocket. So, from my point of view, it was impossible that Russian troops sent drones to Poland. There's no interest of the Russian Federation to attack a NATO country, not at all. The second point is possibly the drones were jammed. But we can see watching the pictures that some drones were fixed with panic bands and all that. So it is very likely that Ukraine troops, in a common sense with NATO, tried to make a false flag operation to provoke a deeper engagement by the United States. That's what I see. So the so-called violating of Estonian airspace by 3 MiG-31 fighters. The only thing I could see is a pen line on the paper, on a map. So, do you kidding me? The Estonian observers should show their radar observations. I want to see more. What we can say is that Estonia extended the airspace of Estonia on its own. So this is normally not possible by international law. And the case is unclear. Normally, if you want to clear such a case, you have to take the telephone and to ring Moscow and to ask, what are you doing over there? But this does not happen. The only thing we saw is a pen line on a map. And this is not enough. And we can be sure that this was not an attack by Russian fighter jets. The fighter jets passed by in the direction to the enclave of Kaliningrad. This is absolutely not an attack. And NATO tries to use that to bring a kind of hysteria into Western public. And the third case, the drones in Denmark, this case is for me completely unclear. I don't know what it is, so I have no idea. So I think all these things are provoked actions to bring Western people, the population, in a state of hysteria, to make people afraid of a possible Russian attack, to bring Western countries deeper and deeper in this war in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And I think the most important point is NATO wants, from my point of view, force the Russian Federation to split their armed forces and to force the Russian Federation to draw back a part of its armed forces from the Donbas and Ukraine to the north, to Karelia and the Baltic region, to make it easier for the Ukraine armed forces to hold the line. That's the background from my point of view.
Mm-hmm. Looking ahead, how do you see the war itself evolving? Are we headed towards territorial settlements, prolonged stalemate, or beginnings of peace negotiations, or World War III?
So, from the American point of view, from the point of the Trump administration, they want to reach a settlement because Mr. Trump and his team is under pressure because the Americans have so many debts. And they must get clear their budget. And they try to drop the Ukraine case because there is no return of investment for the United States. But at the same time, the United States want to hold the Russian Federation under pressure. And from the Washington point of view, the Europeans should overtake this job. So Trump wants to Europeanize this war. And if the European countries, the Western European countries, EU and UK, want to go on with this war, they can buy the weapons in the United States, and the military-industrial complex of the United States will make billions of dollars of that. At the same time, the Europeans want to continue with this war because they brought their own country in a dead-end street. For European political elites, this war is a kind of bloody bankruptcy delay. They underestimated the strength of the Russian army. They thought we can fight Russia and bring Russia to its knees. In the last 4 years, this was impossible because Russia is backed by China. And they underestimated this situation, but they invested so many money into the Ukraine war that they cannot pay back this money. And you have to keep in mind that European elites are deeply involved in everything what happened in Ukraine in the last 10 to 15 years. For example, Western politicians, EU politicians, were deeply involved in the Maidan coup in February 2014. According to the study of Professor Ivan Kachanovsky of the University of Ottawa, EU diplomats negotiated with Ukrainian fascists like on a bazaar about the number of assassinations that would be necessary to bring Western European governments into a position to press out the democratically elected president of Ukraine, Yanukovych, to press him out of office. And both sides agreed that 100 assassinations would be necessary. And this is exactly what happened. So the question is unsolved. Who were those diplomats? And was Germany involved? So we have to answer these questions. I think many European politicians have blood on their fingers. And the Minsk agreement, according to our former Chancellor Angela Merkel and the former French President François Hollande, was a try to betray Russia. So this was not a fair treaty, not a fair operation. And many European politicians are responsible for the situation we have to face right now.
With Poland and Baltic states pushing harder lines, how real is the danger that NATO could be pulled into a more direct confrontation with Russia? And do you see the EU and NATO strengthening unity or starting to fracture under the pressure?
These are two questions. The first question is, the Baltic states and Poland are frontier states, and they're dependent, very dependent of EU money transfer and on military support by the United States. And they want to keep the Americans in the game in Ukraine because Baltic countries and Poland are not strong enough to fight on the ground against the Russian troops in Ukraine. but they want to keep pressure on Russia. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, the European Union is deeply divided. A majority wants to fight Russia to continue with this war, and the minority doesn't want that. Hungary and Slovakia. So I think the only thing what keeps the European Union together is the war cause. And the bureaucracy in Brussels want to make itself stronger as a kind of government by going deeper and deeper into this war and by weakening the national states. This is in the self-interest of bureaucracy in Brussels, and they can do it with the help of the United States. So currently, European leaders want war, and I don't have any hope that we can find a way out of this war and to peace, because European people, the majority of European people, is sleeping into their abyss.
Okay, thanks for that. Can you tell everybody who's viewing this where they can see you or get hold of you?
Yes, you can see me by joining my Telegram channel, Patrik_Baab, or on my website, patrikbaab.de.
Okay, thanks for that. Much appreciated. And have a good day. Night, sorry.
Have a good day. Sorry, I don't have so much more information at the moment. Sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
So, ladies and gentlemen, friends and fellow citizens, today I stand before you to speak out against one of the most insidious threats to our freedoms in modern times, the UK government's push for a mandatory digital ID system, cynically called the Brit Card. This isn't just a piece of technology, it's a Trojan horse for mass surveillance, control and the erosion of our civil liberties. And make no mistake, Prime Minister Keir Starmer and his Labour government are forcing this upon everyone in the UK under the flimsiest of pretexts, while ignoring the overwhelming opposition from across the political spectrum and the British public. Let me start outlaying the litany of dangers this digital ID poses. First and foremost, it's a hacker's dream. A centralised database of every adult's personal information, ripe for cyber attacks and data breaches that could expose our identities, finances and private lives to the criminal world. We've seen it happen before with government systems. Imagine the chaos if this one falls. It would enable unprecedented government tracking of our movements, purchases and interactions, turning Britain into a surveillance state where every step is monitored and every descent potentially flagged. For those without smartphones or tech savvy, the elderly, the vulnerable, or those in rural areas, it means exclusion from basic rights like employment, creating a two-tier society where only the digitally privileged thrive. It won't stop illegal immigration as claimed. Migrants will still find ways around it, while law-abiding citizens bear the burden of constant verification. Privacy, gone. Freedom, diminished. And once it's implemented, it'll expand beyond work checks to control access to healthcare, benefits, travel and more, locking everybody into a dystopian web of digital dependency. Starmer and his ministers peddle weak, hollow excuses for why this is supposedly a good idea. They claim it's about securing our borders and tackling illegal immigration, insisting it will make the system fair and provide an enormous opportunity for the UK. But these are nothing more than smokescreens. How does burdening every British adult with a mandatory ID stop small boats crossing the channel? It doesn't. It just punishes the innocent while doing zilch for the root causes. Starmer says it's to ensure controlled migration and listen to the working people worried about illegal immigration. But this is the same government that's failed to deliver on promises, resorting to authoritarian measures instead of real solutions like better enforcement or international agreements. Their justifications ring empty, especially when experts and critics alike point out that it will inflate bureaucracy, cost billions, and achieve little beyond empowering the state over the individual. And who stands against this Orwellian scheme? Virtually everyone outside Starmer's inner circle. All major opposition parties have voiced fierce resistance. The Conservatives, led by Patrik Baab, call it ineffective against immigration and a tool to control citizen. Reform UK's Nigel Farage brands it anti-British, and the Liberal Democrats under Sir Ed Davey vowed to fight it tooth and nail as unnecessary red tape. Even within Labor, MPs are rebelling, recognising the lack of mandate. It wasn't in their manifesto. The Scottish Government has firmly opposed the plans, rejecting this intrusion on freedoms. And let's not forget the NHS Nurses Union, the Royal College of Nursing, joining the chorus of frontline workers decrying it as another layer of control that diverts from real issues like underfunding and staffing crises. This isn't partisan, it's a united front against tyranny. The people's voice is roaring the loudest of all. A parliamentary petition demanding the government scrap digital IDs has now surged past 2 million signatures, shattering records and forcing a debate in Parliament. That's millions of their people in the UK saying no to surveillance, no to control, and no to the future where their lives are dictated by a digital pass. Everyone must not let this pass. Join the fight, sign the petition, contact your MP and stand up for a free Britain. Together, everyone can stop Starmer's digital dictatorship before it begins. Your liberties depend on it. Dynamo Minsk gave us 3 unforgettable nights at the Minsk Arena. On September 22nd, the Bisons earned their first home win of the season with a dramatic 1-0 overtime victory against Baris Astana, sealed by Sam Annis' golden goal. Then on September 24th, it was all about Pinchuk. He scored a sensational hat-trick against Torpedo, his first in the KHL, leading Dynamo to a 3-2 win over the Western Conference leaders.
Главный герой первых 7 минут матча. Перевод под ворота, вот оно, то, что было надо. 1-0, Минское Динамо забивает. Минское Динамо забивает, Виталий Пинчук, первая шайба в сезоне.
Первая шайба в сезоне, 100-й очко в карьере и 50-й гол континентальной хоккейной лиги. Вот так вот сразу.
Сразу несколько знаковых цифр от центрального нападающего Минского Динамо. Вновь эти парни в деле, но теперь в большинстве.
Одним махом закрыл эти вопросы. Давайте еще раз посмотрим на комбинацию. Передача под ворота, развернулся Виталий Пинчук. И вторым касанием отправил шайбу за спину Ивану Кульбакову.
Сэм Энноса, конечно, тоже отмечаем. Зрячая передача на Виталия Пинчука. Прямо в крюк на подставление. Ну а затем Пинчук действительно здорово сработал на добивании. Виталий Пинчук и его улыбка подаренная. Бросает, играет Кульбаков.
И причем Кульбаков так спокойно действует, даже на щитки не опустился, когда играл блином. Пинчук! 2-1! Пинчук дубль!
Ну вот такое голодное первое звено выходит. Просто уничтожали соперника. Сумасшедшее доминирование в этой смене Минского Динамо. Шквал бросков, град бросков по воротам Ивана Кульбакова. Дубль Виталия Пинчука. И вновь Сэм Эннос ему помогает отличиться.
И вот тебе 101 очко, Виталий. Очень важная следующая смена после пропущенной шайбы. И такой достойный ответ.
Своевременнейший гол. Лимош голевая передача, Энес голевая передача, Виталий Пинчук гол. Вновь первая тройка блистательно играет. Пятый матч подряд с набранными очками для Алекса Лиможа. 5 шайб, 3 передачи на этом отрезке у него. И 10-й балл для одного из лучших бомбардиров.
25 секунд до выхода Атанасова. Динамо играет у чужих ворот. Уэле заряжает. Перед собой отбивает Иван Кульбаков. И шайба в воротах. 3-2. Динамо снова впереди в этой встрече. За 17 секунд до выхода удаленного игрока.
Похоже, что это хэт-трик Виталия Пинчука. Похоже, что так. Будем смотреть, но первая кепка на лед улетела. Но там и Пинчук, и Лимош работали под воротами. Но, по-моему, судя по реакции Виталия Пинчука, именно он забросил, поехал первым поздравление принимать. 3-2. В третий раз в этом матче Динамо ходит вперед. Да, полетели кепки на лед. Хэт-трик Виталия Пинчука. Вот так, пожалуйста. Второе большинство сегодня динамовцы реализовали. Но очень классно разыгрывали его динамовцы. Бросок Савье Уэле, работа под воротами роскошная. И Виталий Пинчук нашел таки эту шайбочку, тянулся к ней и отправил в ворота. Да, туда Лимош только приехать успел, когда Пинчук ее же в ворота отправлял.
Такая вот толкотня, да, на пятаке. И сориентировался Виталий Пинчук.
And finally, on September 26th, Shapirov took center stage, scoring twice in a 4-2 victory over Sevastopol, with support from Moraz, Galen, Hamilton and Pinchak. The Bisons secured their third straight home win, climbing to third place in the KHL table.
Появляется пятый полевой у гостей. Бориков, есть вариант на пятаке. Это гол! Это гол! Хэмилтон сравнивает счет на табло броском в одно касание. И здесь уже Самойлов ничего не мог противопоставить такому пушечному выстрелу.
Без шансов. Абсолютно для голкипера Череповецкой Северстали очень необходимый для себя гол. Оформляет Минское Динамо еще в первой половине второй 20-минутки. Ну, здесь хочешь не хочешь заговорить, в том числе и о реализации большинства, в том числе. Не так много шансов в формате 5-4 сыграть сопернику предлагает Череповецкая Северсталь. Конвертация на уровне. И 1-1. За 12,5 по второй паузе.
Не смогли удержать Хэмилтона. Открывание защитника близко к чужим воротам. Из круга вбрасывания наносил этот бросок номер 5 Динамо. И шайба в воротах Самойлова. Лимош. На Тай Смита. На шайбу Галиев. Тай Смит. Шипачев. Перевод. Бросок. Гол! 2-1. 2-1. Вадим Шипачев точным броском в дальний угол выводит Динамо вперед.
Но большинство сегодня, по-моему, просто как швейцарские часы работает у команды Квартального. Вслед за Робом Хэмилтоном в большинстве забивает и 87-й номер Минского Динамо. Шипачева тоже поздравляет с набором очередных баллов в этом сезоне.
Но, кстати говоря, может там и может быть Стась подставлял.
Сеня закрывать череповчане. В итоге могут сейчас проворонить кто-то. Атаку, передача и еще одну шайбу. Забивает Динамо. 3-2 за 1,52 до окончания периода номер 2.
Мастер, что здесь еще добавить? В таком моменте Вадим Шипачев не просто забивает, да, он делает это красиво. Он попадает прямо в девятку, снимает паутинку с ворот Александра Самойлова. 3-2. «Динамо» очень быстро отвечает, так же, как и в позавчерашнем матче против «Торпедо». Ответ не пришлось долго ждать. Пропустили и снова забросили. Точно в 9 в передаче Вадима Морозова. Здесь у него уже 2 передачи. У Шипачева также дубль.
Точно. Играет до нее.
Поддавить бы, и Пинчук делает счет 4-2. Усилиями Виталия Пинчука. Это он постарался, чтобы забрать шайбу себе. И уже ничто не могло помешать Пинчуку сделать разницу в 2 шайбы. Ворота Северстали пустые.
Едва успел проговорить о нерезультативности первого звена минского «Динамо». Виталий Пинчук продлевает свою результативную серию, с чем мы его, безусловно, поздравляем. Хотя долго не удавалось отличиться в 81-м.
Именно
Забросить, да, конкретно про шайбы. Говорю сейчас, но забросил, да, и все-таки прорвало. 4-2 за минуту 39.
Вот здесь усилия Виталия Пинчука принесли успех всей команде. Да. Добавил немного ногами, постарался и сделал счет 4.
3 games, 3 wins. Minsk Arena is a fortress again. Currently, Dynamo Minsk is third on the KHL table. All 3 games can be seen on our Rumble and YouTube channels, and an in-depth written article on each game is on our Substack. And the next game is on the 29th, or tomorrow, in Minsk Arena, where Dynamo Minsk plays the number 1 team on the KHL table, Lokomotiv. And you can follow that game on our X channel on the night live. And you can see the game video next day. It will be on Rumble and YouTube.
Всем привет, меня зовут Милена, и я танцую на матчах Минского «Динамо». Давайте разучим с вами связку, которую мы вместе вечером станцуем на нашей арене. А теперь давайте разберем эту связку по кусочкам. Правая вперед, левая вперед, кружочек, закрыли, закрыли, ударили, хлопок, ударили, хлопок, ударили, хлопок, ударили, хлопок. И повторяем все еще раз. Правая, левая, кружочек, вниз, вниз, ударили, хлопнули, ударили, хлопнули, ударили, хлопнули и еще раз. И заканчиваем ручкой вперед и все вместе хлопаем. Если мы сложим все эти кусочки вместе, вот что у нас получится.
And that brings us to the end of live show 147, Drones and Deceptions. Big thank you to Patrik Baab for his joining us tonight and sharing his insights on the Ukraine war, the drone incidents across Europe, and wider global tensions in shaping our future. And I hope you liked the Dynamo Minsk home games coverage. As always, thank you everyone for watching live from around the world. If you found tonight's discussion valuable, be sure to like, share, subscribe on Rumble, X and YouTube, and spread the word. We'll be back in more depth in analysis, conversations you won't hear anywhere else. Until then, stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you next time from the other side.